Welcome to Ojis Oasis. This is a place where you will learn how to optimize your body, mind, and spirit in ways you have longed for a long time, perhaps your entire life. Our mission is to help you cultivate, nourish, and protect your Ojis, your immunity, and inner peace. What was the mantra that you just used for Mercury? Did you just use one?
Yeah, the mantra for Mercury is Om Boom Buddhaya Namaha. Om Boom Buddhaya Namaha. Om Boom Buddhaya Namaha.
And we are repeating that because Mercury went retrograde yesterday. Mercury is the planet of communication. So anytime I plan a podcast episode during this time, I'm like, okay, we'll see. Hopefully it works. And if it doesn't, it's all good. But I'm just going to put a lot of good, loving intention out and say that I'm so excited, Laura, to have you. I've heard your name as I was explaining right before we hit the record button. I've heard your name mentioned as someone, probably because at the time I was living in LA when I first got to Vaidyagrama. But our mutual friend, Dr. Ram Kumar, mentioned you, and of course I was really, really excited coming back to LA, but then COVID hit. I wanted to connect with you sooner. I've been in this doctor program. I've been finishing up my K2, as you probably know, because I sent you over my chart details. But K2 had their way with me for the past 7 years, and I'm kind of just slowly, I don't know if I should say that I've been recovering or integrating the lessons of K2.
Recovery.
I'm just glad I survived, quite frankly. But I'm also grateful. I'm also grateful to K2 for lots of lessons, and now here we are. And Laura is an incredible, so many things: Ayurveda practitioner, spiritual counselor. You're also an Ayurvedic chef. You wrote a cookbook, an Ayurveda cookbook called Ayurveda Cooking for Beginners. And it's like, what can you not do? You're just like the all-around Vedic queen. You do it all. You do Jyotish.
I can't win anything in the Olympics, for instance, which we've been watching. It's great to watch the Olympics and put yourself back in your place, that's for sure.
If there was an Olympics for the Vedas in America, I would certainly nominate you for something. Because I was like, wow, I could actually ask you a million questions because you've done so much. You've contributed so much to the Vedic community at large in the West that it was honestly, I was like, should I go the Ayurveda route? And I ended up landing in the Jyotish, segment, although we can certainly talk about all the things. But I just thought it was so fascinating how, wow, you've just been doing so much for it's incredible. Like the YouTube channel, the workshops, you travel around the world. The articles that you've written. I mean, thank you for doing this for all of us, students that are out and trying to figure out where do I land in the path of doing this as a career, as a dharma in the West. How do I integrate what I'm learning? So I'm just incredibly impressed and grateful for the breadth of knowledge that you've shared, and very inspired. And that's why I asked you to come on. And I'm very happy to welcome you. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, I'm delighted to be here. Thank you so much. It's great to be with another fellow devotee. We're both devotees of Vedic wisdom, and I think to be a devotee of Vedic wisdom means you're devoted to life, light, love for all. And so thank you for being that for the world.
Yay. And we're both Anuradha moons.
We're both Anuradha moons. That's right.
We can get into that later, but that's
where do we begin?
I know. I love to start with the question for every single guest, every guest that's at least in the Ayurveda or Vedic astrology world. What brought you to the Vedas? How did the Vedas initially find you, or how did you initially find the Vedas?
So the answer that comes to mind, or the feeling that comes up in me, is so different from the chronological order of that. Um, so much, I just have this feeling of like standing under the sky and it showers down upon you, and that's the Vedic wisdom. I've been so lucky to go to Rishikesh a lot. I used to go every year since 2008 till COVID in 2020, and you just stand there on the Ganges River and you just feel that Vedic wisdom flowing from the high Himalayas, right? And what a gift to be able to just get in the stream and be part of it. But it's interesting as you speak. My father was a lawyer, and I was his oldest child, so he didn't decide that because I wasn't a son. He decided that as his oldest, I was going to be a lawyer, and we go into practice together. And my last name is Plumb, Plumb. So he thought it'd be fun if we were Plum and Plum. People got a laugh out of that. And I loved my dad. I had a definite thought that I would do that, but I got off to university, to college, and I was really studying English literature, and I decided to pick up a second major in art history. And I had to break the news to him. I think I'd rather do a PhD in art history and become a curator. And the reason for that is because I was really interested in human greatness, like our greatest achievements. And I wanted to study that. And I feel like the motto of my life is to show the world to itself. I want to show people who we are, who you are. I want to shine that light for others to see, so that we can all see that we are born of the same one light, right? Vasudev Kutumbakam, they say when you get to India. Vasudev Kutumbakam. Beautiful way of sort of welcoming you and saying that we are all born, Vasudev, of that one divine creative power. And therefore we're family, so let's take care of each other. Let's remind each other. Let's be reflections of the light for one another. Anyway, just to get to your question, I think that those things were always there. And at the same time, I ended up working at the Discovery Channel in London. I helped to launch the European service. So I sort of went to London in pursuit of these things that I was telling you about, but it ended up getting a job launching the Discovery Channel Europe. And that was a lot of fun. And I did that for a number of years. And we had a channel that went out to like 11 countries and 7 different languages. It was really great. I got to meet documentary filmmakers from all over the world and thought that's what I would do with my life. Now I finally found it. And the reason I'm telling you that is because when I did find yoga, Ayurveda, Jyotish, I'll never forget Dr. David Frawley saying, as an Ayurvedic practitioner, one of your most important things is that you're going to have to educate people because they don't know what it is. So he said, there's basically 2 things you're doing in Ayurveda. You're educating and empowering. And those are 2 things that are very different from what happens when you go usually to the doctor's office or to the hospital in the West, right? So we educate and we empower. And educating might be, what if you ate breakfast every day at the same time? Here's what might happen, right? Mm-hmm. Educating people on what the truth is about how this world works, how these energies flow, and how we can weave ourselves back into some integrated flow that will help support our greatest wellness and even our greatest joy. And so after having run a documentary channel for a number of years, I thought, education is something I can do. And that's why when you mentioned I got the YouTube channel, I've written articles, I've written books, it's because I've really poured myself into that. A lot of it has been just, I don't get paid for it, but I love doing it. And I've considered it to be resources for clients and students. And it's just grown from there, right? It's just grown from there. And I've been very fortunate to have great teachers and to really catch this wave just as it's really growing. So, yeah.
I feel I share the same sentiment of just doing it because you want to. It's as simple as that, isn't it? Like you feel it's almost as though by doing it, it comes back. It's like doing it gives you back so much ojas. Yeah. And that's how know it's dharmic, right? It's like, and it's also seva. It's also such a selfless service to be able to take these huge, the ocean of the Vedas is, we laugh anytime we talk about it because it's just so, we look at the texts and it's so profound and so complex and simple at the same time, but really to study the Sanskrit to really get the essence, right? And then one shloka can take you a long time to truly master or implement in your practice. as an individual and then share it with your patients or your students. So I share that passion to really help teach and empower, and I really appreciate that. That's a huge like core reason of what and why you
Hmm.
are doing. You mentioned Dr. Frawley. Was Dr. Frawley your first teacher, or was it a book that you found by him that kind of piqued your curiosity and then you dove deeper?
Well, with both Ayurveda and Jyotisha, I started with books.
Mm-hmm.
And for a long time, just read the books, but read every single book I could find. Dr. Ladd's book on Ayurveda was the first book I read. And then I've read subsequently all his books, and I've got his volumes right next to me as well. So Dr. Ladd was definitely the first one. I love Dr. Vasant Ladd is amazing. And then we got to know, I love Dr. Frawley and his writing as well. My husband and I were both teaching yoga. We had a yoga school here in San Diego at the time. And whenever we would be reading, we'd be in bed reading, and we'd be like reading these lines to each other. And it just felt like he was saying the words that was in our heart, if that makes sense.
Mm.
And we just got very excited by all of Dr. Frawley's books. He's written so many. Ayurveda, he's written on Jyotish, he's written on the Mahavidyas. He's done a lot of great writing. So again, it was that way. I have a great teacher of Jyotish, my first teacher. He's had some books, Dr. Jeffrey Armstrong. And then I wanted to do Dr. Ladd's course, but we had a young child, and I really couldn't get away to Albuquerque from San Diego. So I invited Kerala Ayurveda Academy to come to San Diego and hosted them to come teach here for their AWC course way back in 2008. Yeah.
Wow.
So I studied a lot till I finally had them come in, and then I had my formal studies with them. Actually, I did study with Dr. Frawley. I did his, anybody can look this up, American Institute of Vedic Studies, or AIVS.org, I think. I did his, what they used to call long distance courses at the time. In the old days, they put it in a jiffy bag and mail it to you, and then you'd mail back your answers. Or there was a time where you could email your answers back to the tests and things. So I did that, and then I invited. So I did all of my Ayurveda, advanced Ayurveda studies with Dr. Frawley 2005, 2006, and then invited Kerala to come down in 2008. And so it was kind of repeat for me that first year. AWC is, we used to call it that, Ayurveda Wellness Counselor. I think it's now AHC,
Keeps
Ayurveda Health
changing.
Counselor. They keep changing.
Yeah.
But yes, it was kind of repeat in terms of basics and fundamentals the first year. Having said that, as you know from all your studies, every time you have a different teacher, you're getting a whole different interpretation.
Mm.
And so I just studied with as many different teachers as I could because I loved it so much, Yeah.
I get it. I really get it. And I
Yeah.
also I think having the podcast also gives me that ability to connect and see this through all of my peers, teachers, people I admire. I get to share the thing that I love, which amplifies it, and then also not only share it with you and you share it with me, but we share it with so many people from all over the world that may have a new inspiration sparked from the conversation. So it's really technology and the uprise of Ayurveda right now is just a really exciting thing, and so it feels like such a privilege to be part of that wave. And I'm just like, I'm so excited for Ayurveda right now. I mean, so many people are in need of this knowledge, and I'm excited to be one of the people that's kind of able to be in the ocean alongside everybody, like just
I'd love,
swimming and
I'd love to tell you something. When I was shifting from thinking I was going to be a lawyer to thinking I was going to be a doctor of art history of some sort, of some professional there, it's because I was in Italy, and I saw that you were born in Italy. Yeah. So I studied a whole year when I was a junior in college in Florence, Italy. And that's when I thought, I have to live here the rest of my life. I wanted to live in Fiesole. Harvard had a small school in Fiesole, so I was like, I got to be a professor there. And they were just dedicated to the old masters of the Florentine Renaissance, you might say. And the reason I'm bringing that up now is because I think that in terms of how lucky we are to be part of this rise, I think that what we're part of is a remembering of indigenous wisdom. And those of us who were born, as you were, I wasn't, but those of us, anyone who was born in Europe, especially Italy, especially middle, southern, different parts of Italy, they're very close to their roots. They're very close to their indigenous wisdom. You'll see that with the Italians where you cannot put cheese on fish. They'll scream at you if you put cheese. So you get pasta and there's some fish in it. And then someone comes along and says, would you like some Parmesan, madam? And you're like, sure, because it's pasta. And everybody in the restaurant starts screaming, no, 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 no. Sorry about that. And of course, Ayurveda teaches us that you shouldn't mix cheese with fish. And you see that in a lot of the food cultures of ancient people, where they seem to know some of those food combining rules, even if they don't have them on a list somewhere. They seem to know about eating seasonally for sure, right? They seem to know about eating regionally. And that's some of the basics of Ayurvedic, food wisdom.
And I also studied abroad in Florence my junior year of college. Another coinky-dink. I don't know if you call, after a while you collect enough coincidences and you kind of start realizing there's definitely something there.
That's
there's
amazing.
Definitely a connection. Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. Where did you study when you were in Florence?
I almost just said Fidense.
Yeah.
So I went to Syracuse for my undergrad.
Syracuse, yeah.
So
Right.
I think I was, I didn't do like a whole semester or a whole year. I just did the summer because that's just how my school or my major was communications design, which is interesting because I have, again, we refer to the chart, but communication is Mercury, design is, very Venus-y, and those are both in the same house of Dharma. So it's interesting how now I'm kind of using those skills, but in a different way than I had, initially thought I would. But I was studying, what was I doing? I was also doing art history. I was studying Leonardo da Vinci there, following his life. And then there was also another opportunity back, I think I did like a spring break or a winter break where I went and I followed Picasso's life through Madrid, Barcelona, and Paris. So I studied both of those great artists' life and was able to do that. So I've seen
I also lived in Barcelona and Madrid.
Wow.
Yeah.
Beautiful places.
Loved it. Yeah, I love Picasso and following the footsteps. Absolutely.
More coincidences. Put them in the back pocket. Okay, so that was something that was always, I think you just had this inherent, I think we are probably born with a magnetic, predisposition to studying the Vedas. I'm sure that's somewhere, right?
I'm sure that's somewhere. Yeah.
In the soul contract.
Maybe you can figure out how to find that somewhere in the charts or who knows where.
It might have something to do with the fifth house, because I just know that the fifth house is the house. I'm such a, by the way, amateur. I know the language, I can talk about it, but in terms of, I would never actually study my own chart and think that I would know what I was seeing. I could make educated assumptions, but I wouldn't be confident in making conclusions or drawing conclusions. But I did spend quite a bit of time on your website, Laura, and I was listening to some of your workshops that someone was, I don't know who it was that recorded and was gracious enough to share with us. But you gave a lot of talks, but which are incredible and so sattvic and so Shakti, you could just feel the Shakti in them.
Thank you.
And one of the talks you gave was about, it was about explaining Jyotish as the science of karma, which I thought was a really beautiful, simple way to explain what Jyotish is. Yeah. And I was wondering if you could explain, someone who was new to astrology, what that means, science of karma. And then maybe also how it works with Ayurveda.
Right. Sure. Well, first of all, Jyotish is a genius science. that understands this beautiful, beautiful, elegant principle that's right there in the Rig Veda, in the earliest of Vedas, Yatapande Tata Brahmande, that in the smallest thing is the whole, is the all, right? In the one is the all, in the personal is the universal, in you is the cosmos. And so all the patterns of existence of life itself are within each one of us. So we look at the pattern of the cosmos at the moment of your birth to see that pattern that you are bringing alive. I really like to think of the birth chart, the Jyotish birth chart, which is looking at where the planets were vis-a-vis planet Earth, vis-a-vis the backdrop of the stars at the exact moment of your birth. I think of that as a matrix of light, energy, and intelligence, and you are the coming alive of that. And I think that's a very special way to think of it, to think about yourself and your life. Sri Aurobindo, who was a great saint and sage of the last century, close friend of Mahatma Gandhi's, felt that his work was more in helping to renew and revive the spiritual heritage of India. He would say, he's more of a Shakti than a Shaivite, so he would say he believes that our purpose, everybody's purpose, the purpose of our life, is to creatively and consciously participate in the creative evolution of consciousness itself. So consciousness is not fixed. Excuse me. It's not something we close our eyes and we try to get into a quiet state and meditate and, oh, there's consciousness, right? And it is there, it is that. But if you keep doing that, if you keep having that practice, you'll start to feel that it is something that feels lively. And we are here to participate in the evolution of consciousness itself. Makes you ask, well, what is consciousness and why did it create the world? Like, what is that creative power? And again, you have to say, well, it created the world in order to evolve. And we're all aspects of that consciousness here to evolve consciousness. So beautiful but way to just frame that, I think, and set that as a context. I think it's important to remember that Jyotish is a sister science of yoga and Ayurveda. Ayurveda is an Upa Veda, meaning a supporting Veda. It supports the prime Veda, which is the science of self-realization, otherwise known as yoga. And Jyotish is a Vedanga, one of these 6 branches, you could say, that helps to preserve the Vedas, mostly which are grammar and poetry and rhythm and, structure, maintaining the language of Sanskrit. And the 6th Vedanga is Jyotish, which is said to be the eye of the Vedas. So it helps to really see, it helps to see more clearly. What are we seeking to do with our yoga practice or any Vedic science? We're seeking to see reality in its truth, right? We're seeking truth. And I find that both Ayurveda and Jyotish help us understand that we belong to that truth, right? We belong to this light, this radiance, this magical, miraculous world of ours. We're not separate from it. We are part of it. We belong to it, that you're alive on purpose. So when you're looking at Jyotish as a science of karma, you're understanding that as a spiritual science, Jyotish understands first and foremost, you're an Atma. And people often will translate Atma to soul, but it's really in many ways much more than that. You are an invisible, indivisible, indestructible, immortal being. And so what we're able to look at with Jyotish is that this Atma of you, your unique Atma, let's think of it as a river, it's all flowing to the ocean. Ocean water evaporates, goes up to the clouds move over to the Himalayas or any mountain and then rains down, creates rivers, and they go back to the ocean. So there's a oneness, of course, and yet in this human life, there's a uniqueness to you. And this Atma that is evolving, that you're working with over these lifetimes, in this life, we get to see through the Jyotish map what that Atma has come alive to evolve, right? And to express. So I like to think of karma. First of all, I think Paramahansa Yogananda said it beautifully. He said, your challenges do not come. He could have said your suffering does not come. He could have said your karmas do not come. Maybe he did in the original. Your karmas do not come to punish you. They come to awaken you, right? So that's the first thing we need to remember. I once said something, oh my God, you've had such karmas around that. I said that to a friend because she keeps hurting this certain part of her body. And I said that with meaning to be saying it with a lot of compassion. And she was very offended. And we had to talk about it. And I said, well, no, I don't mean that. That's not what karma means to me. She said, I know what karma means. And I was like, well, I guess we all have different definitions of karma. But so I'll just tell you my definition of karma is, and from what I think is very rooted in the Vedas, is it is not Christian. It is not a Judeo-Christian path, right? So it's not, you're punished, you're going to heaven or hell, right? This isn't what karma means. You're not being punished for past actions. You're being invited to wake up. You're being invited to evolve. And whatever is going to help you evolve and wake up, maybe it is a slap on the face, right? But don't take it as a punishment. It's just an effort and energy to awaken, to break the hard shell around our soft beauty, right? So that we can come to know the truth of who we are. And that's why I often feel that our karmas reveal our dharmas. And I think that's what's beautiful about Jyotish too. It can show you, yep. I mean, I've had so many people. I had somebody come to me last week and she just talked for 10 minutes about all the challenges she's had. And of course, you first start with compassion. I really felt for her. But then I was able to say, I see that in your chart. And I think that helps her feel a little better about what she's been going through. It's not her fault. She's not going to be able to figure out with her brain. She's not going to be able to figure it out with conventional methods, right? It's going to be probably something more psychic or spiritual, as well as some of the other things that we can look at through Jyotish. So Jyotish is the science of karma. It's showing you this human body as the vehicle for this Atma within you to have these life experiences so that you can evolve and grow. I mean, it also shows your dharma, if that's, a thing. Some people are more dharmically oriented than others, right? And it can show moksha, it can even show some of our freedoms. It's very beautiful for helping us. It's a very, very beautiful tool to help people through life, especially when you're feeling mentally or emotionally challenged, or professionally challenged or financially challenged, especially when I think so much of our world at large, our societies tell us, you're going to grow up and you're going to be great and we've given you this education and then you're going to get a house and 2 cars and 4 kids and whatever the things are. And then when we fall or fail or hurt, we don't understand it because we haven't really been prepared for it. And that's what I love about Jyotish. It shows you that you are a star. It tells you exactly what your birth star is. It tells you the constellation of you. And it shows more of an understanding as to why you're going through these challenges right now, how long it'll last, and what you're meant to learn from it. And also, there's upayas, we call them upayas or remedies, for mitigating some of the intensity of the energies. As we did when we started, we gave Mercury a little love because we're recording now as Mercury's just gone retrograde, right? And that's an example of an upaya. Yeah. Beautiful. To recognize the planets aren't bad. Mercury retrograde is not bad. Saturn isn't bad. Mars isn't a bully. They're all energies that we're here to work with in order to expand our capacity to love, to be light, right, and to evolve. So it's a beautiful tool. I love it.
I love how you explain it too. And I recently, one of my favorite teachers, Ryan Strong, I just actually had him on last week. He reminded me, he said that the planets aren't doing things to you. When you get a Vedic astrology reading and they are describing what's going on with the planets as they relate to you, it's really more of like a reflection or a mirror of the energies that are inside of you. Yeah. And this is a language, really, like you said, it's so poetic, it's so beautiful how we can take something that's going on inside of us and understand it on a cosmic scale. And I do think it helps us feel liberated from completely, being consumed in it, because we have to zoom outside of the earth and imagine all these big planets that are surrounding us, and I find it very, what's the word? Perhaps validating. Very validating when I hear someone verbatim say, "Yep, oh yeah, that of course, yep, did this something like this, something very, very specific happened at this time, and I know exactly what they're talking about." And they would, the astrologer, the Jyotisha would have no way of knowing, but somehow they can see it. And so it's very comforting to me in that way. And I'm sure so many people who go down this path, the spiritual path of understanding what's going on in their lives, it's such a, like you said, I really agree. It's such an asset to, and we're so blessed to have this knowledge preserved for this long to help us
Yeah.
navigate the hardest times of our lives,
Yeah.
instead
Right.
of getting caught in the samskaras and in the kind of the tornado of the suffering, which is
Right.
easy to get. It's very easy to get swept away
Yeah.
in those struggles for a lot of
It,
people.
I think you absolutely described it perfectly. Joe just helps you stand back and get a broader picture of your life and your experiences, and in a way that helps you be more objective about it. And that I think also helps you have more clarity in terms of choices that you're going to make to move through it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So my next question, should we talk about your unique approach to how you read a chart, or certain things that you immediately look at first? Like, say someone comes to you for, um, perhaps they come to you because you're also an Ayurveda practitioner. So perhaps they are coming with a medical condition, but they want to understand the spiritual aspects of it because maybe they're finally ready to have a spiritual lens of what's going
Mhm.
on. Um, so you'll pull up the chart, and what are usually the first things that will indicate or help you um, get a feel for what's going on in this person's life?
Right. And so I do come from the lens of Ayurveda, so I'm always curious first to know the first house.
Mm.
And I follow the North Indian style. So that's just how the map of the sky is laid out. There's two styles, North Indian and South Indian. And North Indian is a house based. And I love that because the houses represent the areas of the sky that again reflect the areas of your life. And I like first and foremost to see where the planets are in terms of the house. Because where is that planet, which is considered a deva? My teacher would always say these planets are devas, they're divine beings. They're intermediaries between Brahman, the transcendent one, the creative power itself, and then these devas, and then the earthly realm. And so, as devas, they bring light, energy, intelligence, and they're seeking to live through you in this area of your life. If you have sun in the 10th house, you should be visible in your career, right? And you should be a leader in your career. If you have moon in the 7th house, you may be uh, very relationship oriented, for instance, right? If you have Venus in the 5th house, you might be an artist or you might be a performer or something like that. So, and Venus, that very same Venus in the very same sign in a totally different house, you're going to be a different person with that energy, right? So I like to look at the first house because the first house tells us where those planets are going to land,
Mm.
as well as it gives us your rising sign. And the first house is based specifically on what time you were born, and that's why we like to know precisely what time you were born. We can find your rising sign if we know within an hour or two. But if we can find the precision, then we're going to find the right birth star and we're going to get the right events of your life. But the rising sign or the ascendant can help us see your prakriti, which in Ayurveda is a word for your
Mm.
mind body constitution.
Mhm.
It's not just the sign that's on the rising when you were born, it's also any planets that might be there or might be aspecting. That's also where is the planet that rules that rising sign. For instance, just to take the first sign of Aries, Aries rising is a fire sign, so that would make you a fire person or Pitta. Mars, which is a fire planet, rules Aries. So now where is that planet in the chart? Is it in Cancer, which is a water sign that might add a little kapha now to your prakriti? And then are there any planets aspecting? Saturn is a Vata planet. Its aspect would give Vata, or it's an air planet giving Vata. Jupiter is a Kapha planet, so it would give some more of that Kapha. You might say solid, heavy, etc. So you have to look at those influences. And then there's other things you can see. I've seen a number of charts lately where there's a very clear prakriti. You know, let's say Gemini rising, no planets, no aspect, and the planet Mercury who rules Gemini is in another Libra, another air sign. So clearly an air or Vata prakriti. Whereas then all the other planets are in fire signs, right? So internally, their internals are fire, and they might be confused when they do the dosha quizzes or go see somebody who teaches Ayurveda, because they feel like, well, I feel like I'm fire, right? I can be very sharp, very clear, very determined, very disciplined. Sometimes my friends tell me that I'm a bit sharp with my tongue or my way of speaking. Um, Lots of fire, lots of passion, etc. And yet, so then I'll just ask them, okay, but what is your skin like? Does it tend to dryness? What about your hair? Sorry to ask, but what about your bowel movements, right? Again, is there dryness to the physical body? And then they will say, oh, yeah, there is, right? And that's what I love so much about Jyotish, is that we can really refine how we're understanding the Prakriti. We can get, I think, a clearer sense of the detail of it, rather than just, well, I think I'm Pitta or I think I'm Vata. Well, the Vata's in your body, the Pitta's in your mind, right? And then there's some Kapha in your heart, let's say. And I'm just giving that as an example. You can be, depending on how the planets line up, you can have these multiple doshas, you might say, in the chart, which just shows the complexity of us as humans, and we are complex. So we should be able to see that reflected, I think, in the Jyotish chart, which we do. And that's why, again, I love that when those great sages who came to the West and wanted to teach Ayurveda, they had to come up with some way of exciting people to want to learn about it. So they came up with a dosha quiz. But I think the dosha quiz has ended up confusing people, because you are all 5 elements, you are all 3 doshas, and there's just certain tendencies. And I think the Jyotish chart is so good at helping you really see that in greater detail, in greater honesty almost. Yeah.
And to piggyback off that, in Ayurvedic medicine, as Vaidyas, we look at Vikriti because
Yeah.
we're treating Vikriti. So,
Yeah.
and then, but what happens is people that experience dis-ease will take a dosha quiz in a state of dis-ease and think that's my Prakriti. But actually, it's not their original nature.
Yeah.
If they
Yeah.
were experiencing that as their Prakriti, they wouldn't have any symptoms and they would feel very balanced. But if someone's experiencing constipation or, you know, excessive loose stools, or, you know, taking a long time to go, more than 30 minutes to go to the bathroom, I don't know why digestion is popping up for me, because I'm always thinking, as soon as we get into the Ayurveda world, I'm always thinking Agni, what's going on with the Agni, the metabolic health, because without healthy Agni, that's where disease starts. But yeah, a lot of people will mistaken their Vikriti for the Prakriti, just to, you
Right.
know, go back to your
Right.
point of the
Right.
confusion that can come of trying to overgeneralize to make it perhaps more palatable to the general public. But yeah, those dosha quizzes are cute. I see those
Yeah.
sometimes. I'm like, oh, that's
Fantastic.
cute. I just think it's cute
Yeah.
to do it. But yeah,
I think they
yeah,
should only be considered as a sort of just a little taste.
yeah.
Yeah.
A
A little taste.
sampler.
It's a sampler. Yeah. It's true. I mean,
Top one.
Sage Turek said all disease has some form of digestive impairment. Yeah. And all health will have Sama Agni.
Hmm.
Yeah. Really good health with Sama Agni.
Laura, since we're both Anuradha moons, does that mean that you're also a Cancer rising?
No,
No. Okay.
no,
Okay.
no. Good question. So Anuradha moon means we were both born when the moon was in Anuradha nakshatra, which is inside of Scorpio, to let everybody know. But Scorpio doesn't mean what people think it means in the West, right?
Mm.
Because people in the West are now trying to adapt the signs to fit the timing, which is
Hmm.
different. I won't say it's off, but it's different than what we have. So we have, that means the moon we just had a new moon yesterday.
Hmm.
So the new moon is rising, right? And it takes her 28 and a half days to get around the earth. And then it takes her another day and a half to catch up with the sun. So that's why it takes 30 days, etc. So if the new moon, which it was yesterday in Ashlesha Nakshatra in Cancer, it's going to take her 28 days to get to Ashlesha again, right? She's going to go all the way around the stars and get back to Ashlesha. But the sun will no longer be in Ashlesha, so she's going to have to go catch up with the sun, who will then be in Magha Nakshatra in Leo. So just to keep it simple, the rising sign is what time you were born. So the moon, every day the moon changes nakshatra. Every 2.5 days it changes sign. And it does that, right? So we'll get an Anuradha return every single month. We get a lunar return every month. We get a solar return every year. We get a Jupiter return every 12 months, and we get a Saturn return every 28 to 29 years. So Anuradha is, 1 in 28. There's 27 nakshatras, which means the stars are asterisms the moon is passing. And they're the same stars that make up the constellations, but constellations are 30 degrees and they form those patterns. And the nakshatras are only 13 degrees, and they don't really form a pattern. They're just very bright light or cluster of light in the sky. And they're called the lunar mansions. It said the moon goes and spends a night in a different one each time. And then on the 28th day, she comes back to the sun, back to her king. She's the queen and he's the king. And they get back together. Now, rising sign is what time you're born, right? So on the day that you were born, let's see, you were born on March 27th. So this is a really important thing because I always like to say, if we were all at a Jyotish convention and we see somebody come in and we say, gosh, look at that person. Oh yeah, she's a client of mine. She's so blank. The blank is not going to be her sun is in March 27th, gives us Pisces. Mm-hmm. Pisces goes from mid-March to mid-April, then Aries. And this is based on standing on planet Earth, where we see the planets are against the backdrop of fixed stars. It's called the sidereal system. That means fixed stars. And the tropical system is based on where the sun was based on where it was 2,000 years ago. And 2,000 years ago, it's true that on the spring equinox, the sun went into Aries in the northern hemisphere. On the spring equinox, the sun went into Aries. But it isn't true anymore. It doesn't go into Aries now until April 14th. And that's because of the precession of the equinox, which gets confusing. One can Google it. It's on my website, the precession of the equinox. I have a really great video that just shows a nice couple of graphs around that. Makes it easy to understand. And so anyway, we don't say, oh yeah, she's so Pisces because her sun is in Pisces, because we consider the sun to be the light of your heart, the light of consciousness, your indwelling spirit. So it's pretty intimate. It's pretty personal. We don't see it on you. We don't see it because of even your behaviors. What we're seeing is your prakriti, or your rising sign, your lagna, we call it in Sanskrit. And so then we might say, oh yeah, can't you just see she's so Cancer? Or can't you just see she's got such a strong moon to her? We're really interested in the planets because, again, the planets of the Devas, they're the ones who are activating, bringing in that light, making things happen and move. So we would say, oh, she's so moon, or that person's so Mercury, or can you see the Saturn in them? Based on the prakriti. And then if you want to get to know somebody, then you're going to start looking around, well, I wonder what her moon is. Because now I want to know how she thinks, how she feels, how she responds to life, how she interprets. Right? Is she steady and stable-minded? Is she friendly and sweet? Is she quite determined and focused and, full of fire? Is she a leader and a visionary, right? So the first thing let me see, what was I first saying? The last one I was talking about was Leo. The one before that was Aries. The one before that was Scorpio. My first one was, I think, the Cancer one. So that gives you a sense of things. You were born at 2:45 p.m. on March 27th. And that was Cancer rising. I was born also at 2 p.m. Gosh, we do have a lot in common. I was born at 2:30 p.m., so not too much earlier than you. But when I was born in December, that's Taurus rising. And I have Rohini rising. And actually, I love this because I've got Rohini, and I'll show you. You have something similar. But in my chart, Rohini's on the rising and Anuradha's on the setting horizon. And so there's this drishti that runs through my chart, right? Of the lover and the beloved, Krishna and his beloved Radha. So
that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
That Taurus, that is your Earth. I can see that in you. More Earth.
Yeah, Taurus rising, Rohini rising, which is its own sort of thing. But yeah,
I have always thought, since I ever heard about obviously comparing your Vedic chart to the Western tropical system, I always thought I was an Aries, right? And that always seemed to fit because of the fire, the pitta. I always thought I was fiery. And then to hear all of my rising, sun, and moon are all water signs. Yeah. I was like, wow. It took me a moment to register that. Water from all fire. I've always thought I was Leo, sorry, Aries, Leo, Sagittarius.
Hmm.
And then I go to Cancer, Pisces, Scorpio.
Yeah,
And okay, but then when I really sat with it and
yeah,
I really was honest, I mean, I'm easy to cry, whether I'm sad or happy or grateful, profoundly, when I'm feeling a profound moment, and I can feel so deeply because of my Scorpio moon. And I'm sure
right.
you and that's also what makes this really, really fun, is because I feel like I'm talking to someone who can understand exactly how I think, because you think the same way, at least in
Absolutely.
this aspect. Um, but to be able to access that depth within yourself also grants you the empathy and the awareness of how many different types of, the whole spectrum of basically human emotion and experience,
Yeah,
because you yourself go through this huge spectrum. You can basically, I mean, truly, anyone coming to me with anything, I almost feel like I immediately, there's no story that would scare me. There's no um,
mm,
you know obstacle or trauma that I would find overwhelming as a Scorpio moon. I would simply, and that's been the case since I was a child. So um, once I started learning more about what the water signs meant, and basically that it's emotion, I was like, oh yeah, I am
mm,
water, aren't I?
mm.
Huh. That's cool. I
Yeah.
like water.
Water's cool. The water
Water's cool.
signs are the moksha signs, right? The fire signs are dharma signs.
Wow.
The air signs are the kama signs. The earth signs are the artha signs. So there's four pillars of life according to yoga, and that's dharma, artha, kama, moksha. And dharma, of course, we know what that means: your true self, your essence, and your purpose. And kama is enjoyment, creativity, play, which we're allowed to have. It's an important part of life. And then artha, we work and we make something, we build something, we feel proud of something, creating something lasting, perhaps, and we derive some financial support from that. And then moksha, of course, which is spiritual self-realization or liberation. And so the first house is dharma, second house is kama, second house is artha, third house is kama, fourth one is moksha, and then they repeat. And same with the signs. So Aries, Leo, Sagittarius are dharma signs. If most of your planets are there, then you've got a very dharmic life. And then the earth signs, Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn, are artha, so they're hardworking people, as we know. Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius is kama, fun-loving people, playful. Your Geminis are going to be witty. Your Libras love beauty and art, a fine meal, write some poetry, good music. So there are different expressions of it, but that's what the air signs are, is the kama. And then the water signs are moksha. The water signs are moksha, and I think that tells us something. I think it tells us come into the heart, feel things, truly move from human emotion to bhava, or to the bhavana, to the feeling of the heart that is the divine nectar, to know that you are one with all it is, to know that this is the home, the abode, the dwelling of the true divine one. And when you know that, that feeling is called a bhavana, right? And so it's so easy for water people to move into that feeling because they're feeling natured people, and they can pick up on those feelings, and they sense our oneness, they sense our connection. Oftentimes our connection is through human feeling and human emotion. So yeah, let's celebrate the water people, because they're the ones who are relationship oriented, they're nurturing. Cancer's really got great intuition, they love to help others, they make great ayurvedis, great coaches, they're good at feeding others, and they're very tuned in. They're very, very tuned into the sort of mood of a nation, the feel of a people, right? The wave or the trends of the time. And I always say I love cancer people. That they're probably the one who brought the apple to the teacher when they were a child. They're
Yes.
thoughtful. Yeah,
Hmm.
they're thoughtful people, and they're caring. They really care about their friends. Everybody needs to have a cancer friend in their life. May I share something that I think would be helpful for listeners?
Oh, please.
I think it's important to recognize the nakshatra as well, because, for instance, you and I both have moon in Scorpio, and in the West, people think of the Scorpio as sort of cloak and dagger, and they can be harsh and mysterious. And Scorpio is the one water sign that actually has a different ruling planet it's got a fire planet ruling it, right? Scorpio is ruled by Mars.
Mm.
So Cancer is ruled by Moon, water planet ruling a water sign. And Pisces is ruled by Jupiter, again, Kapha planet ruling a water sign. But in the case of Scorpio, it's different. It's a Mars-ruled water sign. So Scorpio, if that were the Prakriti, if that were the rising sign, excuse me, if someone's Scorpio rising, that in and of itself gives PK or Pitta Kapha, not simply Kapha. That's one thing to bear in mind. So there is that about the Moon in Scorpio. They have a certain clarity. They have a certain insight and sort of a penetrating insight. There is that fire there that helps sort of sharpen the mind as they're focusing on things. But the water makes Scorpio people great cheerleaders. They're said to be really great coaches because they can truly see. They can see very clearly. Their clarity is incredible. Their intuition and their almost psychic capacities are incredible. Scorpio moon people have great capacity to see in the dark, so to speak. And at the same time, so they can see, like, for instance, if they're coaching someone, they can see really clearly what's going on with that other person, even maybe more clearly than that person themselves can. But then the water sign aspect means they've got the continuity and the care to keep the follow through. So I'm going to keep checking in with you. I just want to make sure you're doing it. Right? I have a friend, I did a Jyotish retreat 20 years ago or so, but it was at a beautiful ashram, and every evening, after long days of sitting, learning, and practicing, we would have our dinner, and she would say, "Come on, you guys, let's go for a walk. We're in the Sierras. Let's go see the trees and the moon." And everybody else was really pretty tired. I was always game, but everybody else was like, ugh. And she would ask very nicely, and she would wait very patiently, as a water person might do. And before you know it, all of us were up walking through the trees and watching the moon. And that's what Scorpio has. It has that follow through. It has that stick to it, right? Because that's water sign. That's Kapha. But it also has that fire to see clearly, to see what we need to do. We need to go for a walk. We've been sitting all day, right? And so also, but just to say, in terms of the nakshatras, there are 3 nakshatras, Vishaka, Anuradha, and Jyeshta in Scorpio. And if you are Vishaka or Jyeshta, you're more likely to be the way we think of Scorpio moon people. But if you're Anuradha, which is born right in the middle, when the moon was right in the middle of Scorpio, Anu means following. And following Radha, and Radha is the great beauty who was the lover of Krishna. So she represents devotion. She represents beauty. She represents love. And in a way, Krishna represents divine love, and she represents the return of human love. So that lover and the beloved is these two always gazing at each other, staring at each other. And so Anuradha moon people have a kind of a pureness, a kind of an innocence, a kind of sweetness. They are very dedicated to their practices, dedicated to their teachers. The nakshatra is ruled by Mitra, the god of friendship. So they really love their friends. They would rather be a friend than a teacher. They don't like hierarchy. They want to be let's just be part of the group, right? Let's all be together. So it's a very different understanding of Moon and Scorpio depending on which nakshatra it is. And same with all the signs. Cancer has 3 nakshatras, Punarvasu, Pushya, and Ashlesha. And this new moon that we just had was in Ashlesha nakshatra in Cancer. You have that as a rising sign. So it's a new moon rising over your rising sign. But Punarvasu is very Ayurvedic. It's all about rest, restoration, coming back from battle. Let's just take time to sort of heal and rejuvenate. Pushya is like, well, now that we've rested, let's rise and shine. Let's blossom. Right? Pushya is the lotus, symbolized by the lotus flower. And then Ashlesha is very different, ruled by Mercury. It's still that water sign, so there's the emotionality, but Mercury rules it. So Mercury kind of wants to control and wants to be more in the rational mind. Ashlesha's symbolized, the word Shlesha means serpent, so it's symbolized by the Naga serpents, which means Ashlesha people can be poisonous. They can have that sharp tongue, and they can sort of spit poison. They can be like that unless they have an awakening or a desire to be more sattvic. And then you'll find Ashlesha people, that Ashlesha snake thing can relate to the Kundalini rising, or can relate to the Katakayas, which is the symbol for the medical association, right? So they can be great healers. They can be transformational teachers. But it's up to them to make that choice. How am I going to be channeling this snake energy? Am I going to be on the earth, on the ground, just, hiding out and ready to pounce when somebody steps on me? Or am I going to be trying to take that energy and really grow it and take it to my highest transformation? So each of those nakshatras in Cancer is extremely different. And that's why I think it's important for people to learn their nakshatra. That to me is the heart of Jyotish. What ancient people were doing once upon a time was they were laying down at night and tracking the moon, just lying down under that moonlight, basking in that glow, and seeing that the moon was in a different place as she was changing shapes and size every night. And they came to understand, the nakshatras are the divine feminine, right? That each of these stars are considered the divine feminine. Nakshatra is a beautiful word too, if I might just. Nak means near, and shatra, tara, is the root of our word star. So it's the moon was near those stars, but Kshatriya, with that Kshatra, the Kshatriyas is a class in India that was the warrior class, or the royal ruling class. So the nakshatras also has that meaning of to protect. These stars are that which see and protect us. And if you know your nakshatra, you know your guiding light. You know the light that is seeking to move through you. I keep pointing to the heart that comes from your heart, right? And that as long as you're always living in alignment with that which is the truth of who you are, so it's comfortable and wonderful to live there, then you will always be protected, right? And again, I love that idea that we are not alone. No man is an island. No woman is an island. We are the coming alive of light. We are a matrix of light. We belong to the matrix of life, right? And each one of us has this light. If you think of the world as a lattice of light, this invisible lattice of light. And a lattice is light flowing horizontally and vertically. And then right there at the heart it meets. And each one of us keeps that net strong, that weave, that tantra. It's almost a tantric idea, but just a beautiful, beautiful thing about Jyotish is to know thyself in such radiant ways.
I love, listening to you wax poetic about the nature of existence. I could do it for a long time. It's very soothing. You have a very soothing voice too, to articulate everything so clearly, but also there's this really, really beautiful divine feminine softness underneath this clarity it just feels so good to just listen to your voice.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know we're at time, but there was something that I was curious about asking you. One more thing. When you replied, so I sent you over my birth chart just because I was like, well, if we want to like refer to it for any reason, it might be interesting. And then your response was, "Wow, beautiful chart." I think that's what you wrote, and I was like, "Oh, thank you." But why? I wonder what made you say that. And I'm sure. There's always going to be like there's no chart that doesn't come without a Rahu and Ketu. So like no matter who the person is, there's always going to be some shadow or no one's perfect, in other words.
Right.
The stars have, kind of confirmed that we're all going to come with our strengths and our weaknesses. But was there something in particular that made you say that? Because that really felt quite nice to hear from you.
Well, just a reminder, the very first thing I ever heard Dr. Ram Kumar say back in 2008 was Dr. Ram Kumar is our friend. We have a mutual friend in him, and he did used to come and stay with us. He hasn't been in a while, but he is the one who was the founder of Vediagram in Tamil Nadu, just across the border from Kerala, where my sister is now, and I hope she'll still be there when you get there.
I'd love to meet her.
So he would say, the reason we're alive is because of our doshas. We all are born with a certain dosha. And it's why we're alive is because we're alive to heal. Basically, the same idea as saying we're born with certain karmas. We're alive to evolve. And so I do sometimes when I'm looking at people's chart, I have to remind them, don't worry, we all have a Saturn somewhere.
Yes,
totally. Not like this is just you, right? Don't take it personally.
Yes.
We all have Saturn. We all have Rahu and Ketu. In your chart was a couple of things. First of all, I mentioned that I like Cancer as a rising sign. Cancer is ruled by the moon. You have a beautiful moon in Anuradha Nakshatra, one of the Devic nakshatras, which is great for healers, really, really great for healers, somebody who's got a lot of empathy and compassion. I think of Ayurveda as the science of compassion. How can a science that's based on Mother Nature or Mother Earth not come with those mothering qualities? And I'm sure you've seen that all of the Vaidyas we know, all the teachers we know through Ayurveda have come with just such there's such embodied compassion, right? I just love being with our people in Ayurveda because that compassion is so strong and it really flows. And Moon in Anuradha has that. The other thing I find a lot with people with Ayurveda who are practitioners is that they're either going to have a strong Libra or a strong Venus. Why do I say that? Libra is the sign of equilibrium, of balance, right? It's the scales that you see in the symbol. And Libra is ruled by Venus. And I think of Venus as the planet that relates to nature, all the beauty and delight and love, you might say, of Mother Nature herself. So Venus rules Libra. One of our teachers, Dr. J. Rajan, has Libra rising. I think his son is there as well, his SUN. And so definitely that balance you see in him, that shine of the sun being in the first house. But that Venus ruling sign that's all about balance is very Ayurvedic. And then it may not be Libra. In your case, you don't have planets in Libra, but look at your Venus. It's exalted. And of course, as soon as I see an exalted planet in the chart, that's fairly unique to have a planet in its highest point, the point of exaltation. And by the way, anybody can get out. If you ever hear that a certain planet is exalted, go out and look at the night sky. These people weren't making this stuff up. They actually saw that that planet is brighter when it is transiting that particular sign. And Venus, when it transits Pisces, is like this bright, shiny, radiant diamond in the sky. It's so pretty. And of course, then diamond is the gem that associates to Venus and love, and that's why people wear diamonds when they get married. But she looks like a diamond in the sky. So again, it's not being made up. It's as above, so below. And so Venus, when that planet's exalted in Pisces, it gives a person with, I think of agape, that love that is like brotherly love or the love of humanity, somebody who's got such a good, just naturally such a good heart, really seeing the best in things, a natural sense of beauty, like a beautiful aesthetic. My sister has an exalted Venus, and she and her husband collect art, and they have this beautiful home in the woods. And everything about it just has its own, each thing, is beautiful, but in a way that's not overwhelming or off-putting. And anytime she sends a card, whether it's birthday or she's traveling, it's always something very unique and very refined. So it's a beautiful, it's like the Venus in Pisces, you could say, represents the refinement of the heart. And beauty, of course, is a high spiritual value. So we're not just talking about the beauty industry. We're talking about the beauty that stops you in your tracks and you go, ah! And in that moment, it's like taking your breath away, right? And you're feeling this awe, you're feeling these tingles, you feel yourself one with the very thing that you're looking at, that beauty in nature that you might be seeing. And Adi Shankara, the first of the great monks, basically, in the couple thousand or so years ago, said that it's really great to meditate, right? And that's through a meditation we learn about ourselves as Satchidananda. We are pure presence, you might say, or pure being, pure consciousness, pure bliss. He said, but that's not all that we are, so keep going. And the more you go and the deeper you go, there's these various realms of consciousness that you can become more and more aware of through your meditation. And at the highest realm, he says, is Satyam, Shivam, and Sundaram. And Sundaram, the last one, is where he puts his emphasis. He wrote poems about it. Sundaram means beauty. So Satyam is this kind of truth, this Shivam, this auspiciousness, and this beauty. Beauty is a high spiritual value. And so when somebody has Venus in Pisces, you can see that beauty is a spiritual practice for them. A friend of mine with Venus in Pisces, she has an urban farm. She loves being nowhere in the world, but back in her farm, engaging with Mother Nature and her rhythms and her beauty and her deliciousness and her bounty. So that's another reason I thought it was a beautiful chart. The other thing is your moon. Another thing people should know is planets can be debilitated. So Venus is in its height. Opposite the sky, it would be in its low point. But that low point, there's all kinds of things that cancel out those rules. So please don't look up your chart and then go Google it. You really need to go to somebody who does know what they're talking about beyond their first year of Jyotish, because I say in the first year you learn the fundamentals. In the second year you learn everything that cancels what you just learned, all the different rules. So your moon has that Nichabanga, that cancellation, which is beautiful, and it's aspected by Jupiter. Its aspect from Mars is what cancels its debilitation. Its aspect from Jupiter is a beautiful aspect. I mean, Jupiter is the planet that is expansive, is protective. He gives dharma, he gives wisdom, he gives growth and momentum, and he invites us to our higher self. So when Jupiter is with or aspecting the moon, I feel like the motto there is don't sweat the small stuff, or we'll always learn the lessons. There may be emotional hurt, injury, pain, but that person's always going to look for what's the wisdom here, what's the higher um, perspective, we might say. So, 3 planets, Sun, Venus, Mercury, another one of my great teachers of Jyotish has Sun in Pisces. And that usually leads a person to be interested in medicine or healing or helping others in some way, because Pisces loves to help others. Pisces loves to uplift. Pisces loves to remember our wholeness and our oneness and our belonging to each other, right? And so one way you can help people restore their wholeness is by becoming a doctor of integrated medicine. And my first most important teacher of Ayurveda, he's got Sun there in Pisces, and he is both an allopathic and an Ayurvedic doctor. And then the other thing is you have 2 planets that look debilitated, but they're not. They both have the cancellation of that debilitation. Mercury is the other one, because Mercury, debilitated in Pisces, is with Venus, where the planet that's exalted there. That's the same thing that the great Albert Einstein had. So if Mercury represents the intellect, reasoning, analysis, problem solving, and communication and language, how can Mercury be in its fall in Pisces? How does that explain Albert Einstein, right? He's the symbol of genius. So when you think about Albert Einstein, he didn't do well in school. He almost flunked out of some semester in college. But later, when he used to sit down after lunch and just close his eyes and just have these thought experiments, what is that? But seriously, just contemplating, letting his imagination, his intuition go, connecting his mind to the cosmic mind, he was able to, you might say, download these genius concepts. And that's what's great about a Mercury when it's Nichabanga in Pisces. It gives an intuition that can bring genius. So yeah, it's a beautiful chart. And then 3 planets in the 9th house of Dharma, of meditation, of spirituality, of opportunity that comes from right alignment. 2 planets, important ones, Jupiter and Mars, in the 11th house of being supported by the universe, financial windfalls, wealth, tribes, and then the moon in the 5th house, which is a beautiful place for the moon because that's a Purva Punya house where merits, you could say, or positive karmas from past lives are accrued in this life because of all of your good deeds in your past lives. So, boy, I could go on. You've got a strong Rahu, you got a beautiful Ketu. It's a good chart. And you got Saturn in the 6th, which is a good place. Let's put him in the closet. A malefic planet in a malefic house is a good thing. And you've got Saturn, both Saturn and Rahu there. So it kind of cancels their malefic tendencies.
Wow, that is fascinating. I've never heard that. I love that so much. And I have so much love for Saturn. Um
Yeah.
like out of necessity.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like what is it? I think my Atmakarika is Saturn, or like the planet with the highest degrees, which I'm still learning what that really
Yeah,
means. And
that's right.
I'm
Yeah,
not,
Makaraka is.
what I've intuitively kind of grasped from that knowledge is I like to work hard. I just feel like
Mhm.
for any
Mhm.
blessings, I like to know that it's well earned and
Mhm.
deserved, and I don't feel shy of the earning aspect. I think that's a really important, like a good example is I transferred schools. I was at CCA and I
Mm.
graduated out of their
Mm.
clinical program, and I did all of that, and I could have just simply gone into the doctor program there and done 1 year, but
Mhm.
I wanted to do the scholarly route. I wanted to go back to India. I wanted to learn some Sanskrit. I wanted to learn the ancient Vedic formulations. And I just felt if I have the opportunity and I have that just intuition that that's going to be, it just, I couldn't not do it. But it was difficult to transfer
Yeah, I
because I
bet.
had to do a lot more, anatomy and physiology. And I
Mm.
even, the teaching styles are a lot different, understanding the whole like software, how getting all the new books. It was
Yeah.
basically start, like you said, like kind of starting over in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
Having all Indian teachers, all the teachers were basically half the class speaking in Sanskrit. I mean, most of
Yeah.
the, as you know, as a graduate. So but the appreciation, that depth is so satisfying, I think, for
Yeah,
someone with
absolutely.
maybe a Saturn, like a strong Saturn placement. It feels like it's gratifying, this kind of intangible place in my soul that feels like, okay, that's good. I'm glad I did that. It's
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Well, you also have Saturn in the sixth house, which is the house of work.
Mm.
So the planet of work and patience and perseverance is in the house of work and patience and perseverance. So it makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Podcasting
It's
is
beautiful.
similar. Oh, anchored.
It's an anchoring for all of your water. Yeah.
That makes sense. And Laura, can you imagine starting a podcast in the middle of a doctor program? I mean, it was, the idea of it was, at the time, I felt kind of insane. And I was like, why? I think I have enough work, to keep me
Mm,
pretty busy. But then the opportunity came and I couldn't say no. And I know that sometimes that can manifest as like overworking, perhaps, or like you work yourself to the point of, perhaps, like, maybe there are some things that you should say no to, but I have a tough time saying no to
yeah.
things I really love doing, because this is, and I'm so happy I didn't say no to doing the podcast. And
Yeah.
I'm happy that, like, this is something that just, actually, as I keep going down this path, it's more and more fun. It's just getting so fun because I get to talk to people like you, and
Yeah.
shine a light on just incredible teachers and scholars. I mean, I can't think
Yeah.
of a better way to spend my time on
Yeah. I know it's
earth.
brilliant. Your K2 is in the second house, so I can imagine the K2 period brought forth that idea that you would speak and that you would do this kind of a podcast. It's a perfect K2 in the second house thing to do.
Is it really? Oh my
Plus,
gosh.
I don't know when it was, but your last K2, the sub period was Mercury. So doing a podcast is really following K2's ask of you.
I feel like I have definitely said yes to all the asks. I've
Hmm.
surrendered to the whole, and it's probably made it a lot easier, but doesn't mean it was easy. Even though I think it's having the right mental attitude through the roller coaster has been really, really important. Um, but yeah, this is, it's so fascinating to hear your perception, because it just feels so on, A, it feels so on point, and B, it's so sharp. Like the way that you're articulating it is so, wow. It's like I get to see it through your eyes, which is so cool.
I
So
love
fun.
that. Thank you. Well, it's been really delightful to be with you. You're really so full of love and empathy and focus. And as you said, the scholarly approach, which is again, Anurado, I hear that in that sense of really respecting the ancient ways and respecting your teachers. I love that. Love that about you.
Thank you so much, Laura. I feel like my Venus Mahadasha really is just starting, because I only just started to feel
Mm,
that pressure of K2 kind of lifted, even though I've been out of K2 for almost, I think, yeah, almost a year. Um, I think I know that there's like this transfer period, that initial, 6 months in and 6 months out, you sort of like mingle with the,
yeah.
between the two. But it's starting to feel, life is starting to feel better, which might surprise people, that like it's not always, gravy when you're an Ayurvedic practitioner, or when you know how to live in harmony with nature. But sometimes there's karmas that, like you said, we need, that are, um, I'm really glad that we touched on the word karma, and that you touched on it specifically in a way that made the word feel less threatening, or less of like um, a judgment. It's actually such a refining blessing to have the opportunity to be able to burn karmas, and what that even means,
Yeah.
and to
Yeah.
learn the lessons of it. And it that's how we grow. And we can make such quantum leaps in one lifetime, if we just make that sincere, honest choice to have a friendly relationship with life.
That's
You know,
right.
and
That's right. Absolutely.
I think so many times we feel maybe that like we have to fight reality or avoid reality or, you know, put a really romantic spin on it. And then, as our other great teacher, Dr. Svoboda, teaches us, be friend. If you don't come to live with reality, reality comes to live with you.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's a mantra that I'm constantly going back to as well with
Yeah.
the wise words of Mr.
And I love
Svoboda.
what Rumi wrote about letting every experience and emotion be like a guest that you welcome into your home. Just welcome it. Hello. What can we do for you?
And
What gift do we have?
I hope that's how I've made you feel. I know that, you know, you've done so many talks and taught this, you know, all these things for so many people. But I hope I've, you know, created. Well, it's called Ojis Oasis, so I hope that you
Yeah.
feel that, you know, the substance and the passion and the love that you've offered with me and the listeners. I hope that you are feeling just as much gratitude, love, respect, and
Thank you.
admiration. And I hope you are receiving all of that right back, because
Thank you.
to study this and make it a life of study and make it a life of service and a life of continually sharing your light and all the meditation that you've done, all the spiritual work that you've done. It is the highest dharma. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. It's been really lovely having this time with you. Thank you, Sasha. Thank you. Blessings.
Thank you for listening to Ojis Oasis with Sasha Bershadsky. To learn more about Ayurvedic healing, please visit ojisoasis.com. We'll see you next time, and until then, have your smile.